of the sweater. That is, we are going to knit the part of the chest, but as you can see, if you look at a dog, the part of the chest is quite bigger than the neck, so we need to add increases in order to obtain the size of the chest. And in order to do so, we again will need to do some calculations using the rule of 3 of the proportional sums. You can use your calculator in order to do it, but of course you can do it online and make your life easier. Just to recap, here are my neck calculations. So I'm going to calculate the stitches that I need for my dog. As I said, it's different for any dog. There are charts that give you the approximate sizes for the breeds of the dog, but if you have a dog, it's a good idea to measure your dog. So I know that the chest of my dog is 60 centimeters. And what I know is that I'm going to use that stockinette stitch for this part of my knitting project, and because I have already knitted a gauge swatch, I know that in order to get 10 centimeters of stockinette stitch with this yarn and these needles, I need to knit 14 stitches. So for 10 centimeters I need 14 stitches. The chest of my dog is 60 centimeters, so I would need 84 stitches for it. But there is another thing that I should take into consideration, that I already have 60 stitches from the neck. So I'm going to calculate the difference. I already have 60 stitches, which I used for the knitting of the rib stitch of the neck. So I'm going to take 60 out of 84, and my difference is 24 stitches. So I need to add 24 stitches in order to get from the width of the neck to the width of the chest. So I'm going to add these increases here from the neck to the front leg, because here the body of the dog creates a curve, and it's better to add my increases here. The back of the dog is more or less straight. I need to distribute these 24 stitches evenly between the neck and the chest of my dog, so I'm going to knit 12 double increases. So another thing I need to know is the measurement from the neck to the front leg in order to know how many rounds I am going to knit in order to reach the front leg. As I said, I have knitted a gauge swatch of stockinette stitch, and I know that in order to get 10 centimeters of stockinette stitch in height now, I need 15 rounds. I also know that the measurement of my dog from the neck to the front leg is 20 centimeters. So I'm going to use the rule of 3. I know that for 10 centimeters I need to knit 15 rounds, but I need 20 centimeters. So this calculation is easy because it's the double. So I will need to knit 30 rounds. As I said, my increases will be 12 double increases. So for my increases I will need 12 rounds, but I'm not going to increase on every round. I am going to increase every other round. So the total number of rounds for this will be 24. 12 double increases every 2 rounds is 24 rounds. But as I said, I need 30 rounds in order to get 20 centimeters. So what I am going to do is to knit 24 rounds, which are going to be one round with double increases and one round without any increases, and then I will have to knit 6 rounds with no increases, and in this way I will get from here to here. And now I am going to show you how to add your increases. I'm going to knit the make one left and make one right increase, so please pay attention how to do it. The first thing I'm going to need are some stitch markers. So this is the beginning of my first stockinette stitch round. I'm going to use this stitch marker in order to know where the beginning of each round is. And for the first round, I am just going to knit my stitches, all my stitches now. So please knit your stitches in knit stitch and meet me at the end of the round. So I'm here, I have one more stitch before the end of my round. As I said, this was a round of no increases, but my next round will be a round of increases. And now what I am going to do is to add a make one left increase the left side, and make one right increase on the right side. I'm not going to knit the increase at the beginning. I am going to knit one stitch, and now I am going to add the increase. In order to remember where to add your increases, it's a good idea to use stitch markers or scrap yarn. Now I'm going to use this safety pin of different color. So this stitch marker marks the beginning of each round, and this marks where I should create an increase. And also please keep track of your increases. Write them down or find another way to keep track of them, because it's very important to add the correct number of increases. Now I'm going to show you how to create the increase. As you can see, please let me show you, here between my two stitches there is this bar of yarn. Now what I'm going to do is lift this yarn. There are two ways to do it. First, you can lift it with your right needle and then put it on your left needle. Now I'm going to put it back because I want to show you the other method. Or you can just insert your left needle from the front to the back, so your left needle should be pointing upwards, and as you can see, this bar of yarn, which I'm going to use for my increase, is slanted to the left. That's why it's called a make one left increase. And now I'm going to use this loop in order to create a new stitch. I am going to knit this new stitch, the increase, by inserting my right needle at the back like this, and now I'm going to wrap the yarn around this loop, pull it through the loop and create my increase. Now it's not visible, but if you look carefully, let me zoom in as much as I can. If you look carefully, this stitch is kind of leaning towards the left. So I have created my make one left. I'm going to knit the rest of the stitches as a knit stitch until I reach one stitch before the end of my round. So please continue until you are here, okay? And I will meet you then. So now I'm near the end of the round. I have one more stitch. This is going to be a knit stitch because I'm going to have 2 knit stitches between my increases. Here is where I am going to knit my make one right increase. There are 2 ways to do it. One way is to lift the stitch with your right needle and place it on your left needle. This is one way to do it. Now I'm going to release my loop again, and the other way is to do it directly. So you'll go from back to front and lift this strand which is between your 2 stitches, lift it on your left needle. As you can see, this loop now is leaning towards the right, and now I'm ready to knit it. It's a bit difficult to knit this stitch because in order not to create a big hole, you will need to knit it from the front to the back. So let me do it very slowly. So you'll insert your needle like this, and then you'll wrap the yarn, the working yarn, around the right needle, and you will pull up your yarn and create the increase. Here's the increase, and as you can see, I don't know if you can see it, please let me zoom in. It's kind of pointing to the right. Now I am going to knit this stitch, which is the last stitch of my round. I'm going to place my stitch marker to my right needle. Again, I am going to knit the next stitch, the first stitch of my next round. And now this is a round where I'm not going to add any increases, so I will just place my safety pin or my stitch marker on the right needle, and I will knit my stitches. And so please knit the stitches of this round as you would normally do, and I will meet you at the end of the round. This is the end of my round with no increases. I'm going to slip the marker on the right needle, and now I'm going to knit a round with increases. If you ever forget how many increases you have done, a good way to know is to just count your stitches. For example, here I had knitted one round with increases. I had started off with 60 stitches. Now I need to have 62 stitches, and I have already counted my stitches and they are 62. So now again I will knit this one stitch, and I'm ready to create my increase. As we said, this is a make one left increase, so this bar, which is the connecting bar between my 2 stitches, should be pointing to the left. I can do it this way if I find it easier. And now I need to knit this stitch from the back. So I did it. As you can see, it's quite difficult to see it because the markers are here, but the way I knit the make one left increase creates stitches which point to the left. Please let me put my safety pin back. Now I'm going to knit my stitches until I come here where I'm going to knit a make one right increase. So please continue until you are here. Again, I'm here at the almost at the end of the round, where I should make one right increase, I'll slip my safety pin or stitch marker to the right needle, and I'm going to make one right increase. So here I need to create my right increase. There are two ways to do it. I mean to lift this bar of yarn. You can lift it this way and then put it on your left needle, or you can do it directly. If you go from back to front with your left needle, and in this way, as you can see, this yarn is leaning towards the right. So now I am going to insert my needle from front to the back, wrap the yarn around and knit my stitch. And I don't know if you can see it here. These these stitches lean towards the right. Now I'm going to knit my stitch, and now I'm going to take my stitch marker to my right needle. Now I have a round with no increases, so I am going to knit my round with no increases. Please continue adding increases this way, knitting one row with no increases and one row with two increases. Make one to the left and make one to the right. I'm going to meet you in a while because I would like to show you how to leave an opening for the leash. At the end of my 16th row, this was a row of increases, so now on my 17th row I'm not going to have any increases. As you can see, because I added the increases, the sweater has started taking the shape of the dog's chest. Of course, I have not finished with my increases. Up to now I have added 8 double increases, meaning 16 stitches, but I need to add some more, 4 double increases according to my calculations, and then I will have to knit 6 rounds with no increases in order to reach the size of the dog's chest. I stopped here because at this point I need to create an opening for the dog's leash. This opening should be at the opposite side of my increases because it has to be at the back of the dog. I'm going to create the opening here, but if you have the dog with you, it will be better to check with the leash and your dog where to create the opening. It doesn't matter where you create the opening, you can create it in any round. It's suitable for the leash of your dog. What we have to do in order to create this opening is, first of all, to divide our project into two. You have to count your stitches. I counted my stitches and I have 76 stitches. If I divide my 76 stitches by 2, I will get 38 stitches. But I'm going to need some of these stitches for the opening. So let's say that for my opening I'm going to use 12 stitches. Of course, the number of the stitches that you are going to use for the leash opening will depend on the yarn and the needles you will use. So please try to find the width you prefer for the leash opening. If you find it easier, what you can do is to count the stitches and place the markers between the stitches that you are going to use for the leash opening, and then knit the stitches. So please let me place my safety pins in this case, and I will meet you to show how to cast off your stitches. So I have counted my stitches. I have 32 stitches on one side, then I have the stitches I need for my leash opening, my 12 stitches between these two safety pins, and 32 stitches on the other side. And now I'm ready to start binding off my stitches. Another thing to be careful about is as to where to start counting your stitches. You should start counting your stitches from the beginning of the first stitch, not from the increases, from the first stitch where you have put the beginning marker. And now I'm going to bind off my first two stitches. Let me wrap the yarn around my neck, and the first thing I'm going to do is to take this stitch marker out. So I have just removed the marker, and I am going to knit 2 stitches, and then I'm going to take the second stitch on the right needle and pull it up and slip it over the first one, and in this way I have one stitch left. And again I'm going to knit the stitch which is on the left needle, and then I'm going to take the second stitch on the needle, on the right needle, and bind it off. And I'm going to do it this way until I have finished all my 12 stitches. So please keep on binding off your stitches until you've reached the stitch marker. So I have one more stitch to bind off. I'm going to knit it, and then I'm going to bind it off. But now, because if I have one left, I have to use this one as well, otherwise I will be left with one more. So I'm going to knit this one and slip and bind it off as well. Be sure to bind off the first one of this half of your stitches, because otherwise you will be left with one more stitch. I counted my stitches, they are 32, and now I'm just going to knit them until I reach the end of the round. So I'm here almost at the end of the round. My next round is going to be a round of increases as well, because I have not finished the rounds of increases yet. The first thing that I'm going to do is start my round and add the increase, then make one left increase. Then I will knit my stitches until I reach the point where I have bound off my stitches for the leash, because there I will have to cast on stitches. So please make sure that you add the increases you need. If you haven't finished with the number of increases you need for your sweater, please knit your stitches and meet me there. I have knitted my stitches until the opening, but now as you can see, it's not possible to reach the other side and knit because I have this opening, and in order to compensate for this opening, what I need to do is to cast on new stitches. The way I do it is like this. I wrap the yarn around my index finger of my left hand, and then I create loops. the number of the new cast on stitches will be the same as the number of the stitches that were cast off. So I cast off 12 stitches. I'm going to add 12 new more stitches. So 12, let me check please. Yes, I have 12 new stitches. So now I'm going to start knitting this part of my project. Be careful for your new stitches not to be twisted, so the cast on should be pointing downwards like this. And now I'm ready to knit my first stitch on the left needle. It's a good idea to pull up your yarn a little bit, and then I will continue knitting my stitches. What you need to do now is to continue working your rounds, and if you have more increases to add, please do it. So now I'm here at the leash opening. I need to knit these new stitches in order to create the opening. Sometimes it's a bit difficult because you need to pull up the loop a little bit in order to be able to knit it. Also, it's a good idea to pull up your yarn a little bit. Now these new stitches look a bit loose, but don't worry, when you continue knitting it won't be so visible. So I have finished knitting my new stitches, and in this way now I have this opening for the leash. Now I'm going to continue working on the dog sweater because I have some more increases to add, meaning that I will have I'm going to work the remaining part until I reach the front leg of the dog. So I have finished the part of the sweater which is between the neck and the front leg of my dog. This is it. So I have 20 centimeters in height and 60 centimeters in width. Please always check the size with your dog. So now we are ready to move on to the next part of our project, which is to create the openings for the dog's legs and knit the vest, let's say, of the dog. So please watch the next part of my tutorial.